Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this very special edition of Poets at the Library. I'm Janie Herman, the manager of programming at Princeton Public Library in Princeton, New Jersey, where we regularly host a program called Poets at the Library and have done so for close to 20 years. And this is a special Sunday afternoon edition to pay tribute to Christopher Bursk. He was on our schedule to be a reader coming up this fall, but his book ended up being published posthumously. And so there's been a series of tributes to him that have happened in the last few months and for the publication of his book. And I'm so happy that the library could be a part of this tribute series. And we are the fourth and final stop on this. This event will be recorded and will go up on the library's YouTube channel so that it can live on as a tribute to him and shared with others. And we have two very special guest readers here today who are going to make his words come to life for us. And I'm going to hand this over to Lorraine Linz, who is going to introduce our guests and the series. Thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here today. It's a little bittersweet. It is the Omega reading series, as Janie had mentioned, the fourth and final, the first being with Red Bank Library with Lyndon Molenhausen. And that was actually one that Chris had originally set up himself. And then after that, Bucks County Community College, and then Newtown Bookshop with Kathy Morrison, and then of course today with Janie. Each time we've had a pair of readers that brought a new voice to his words and created almost their own translation of his translation, as it were. So these are a beautiful opportunity to spend some time together in one final opportunity and one final reading. The book, as mentioned, with Aeneas in a Time of Plague, was published in, I believe it was July through Ragged Sky Press. I don't know if Ellen Foose is in the room, but Ellen did a beautiful job with it. And I should mention to you, if you want to pick up the book, you can do it through any of your favorite online book dealers, Amazon or any of the others, or your finer bookstores. If they don't have it, ask them for it. What you should know is if you do purchase through Amazon, all of the proceeds are going to the Peace Center in Langhorne. Nothing will be taken. It is all going to benefit one of his stronger believed donations, which was the Peace Center in Langhorne. I would read a big, wonderful tribute to Chris, but he would flinch at that. So I'm just going to invite you to look at his book and enjoy the book. I can tell you a little bit about him. He was the recipient of the Pew, the NEA, the Guggenheim Fellowships, and the author of 18 books. He was grateful to have his work recognized by AWP Donald Hall Poetry Prize, the Allen Ginsberg Prize, the Green Rose Prize, the Patterson Prize, the Allen Ginsberg 49th Parallel Prize, New Letters Press in Poetry, and the Milt Kessler Book Award. He was a teacher, mentor, a friend to so many in his community, but most importantly to Chris, he was the grandfather of 6. So I will jump into inviting you to sit back, enjoy the poetry, enjoy the sound of these words coming to you, let them wash over you. And then I'm going to introduce our guest readers. We're very lucky and pleased to have them with us today. Gerry LaFemina is the author of over 20 books, including The Story of Ash, which is poems, Baby Steps in Doomsday Prepping, and those are prose poems published by Madville Publishing. Madville will also be publishing his first book of creative nonfiction, The Pursuit. It's a meditation on happiness. And Long Sky Media will be publishing Pop and Hiss, Selected Punk Poems 1990 to 2020, and that's going to be coming out in 2022. Gerry is a noted scholar, an arts activist, a teacher, and is a Fulbright specialist in writing and American culture. He's a professor of English at Frostburg State University and a mentor in the Carlow University MFA program. He also serves as president of Savage Mountain Punk Arts, a nonprofit dedicated to underground arts in Appalachia, and Gerry fronts for the punk group, The Downstrokes. Reading with Gerry today is Hayden Sanye, and she is the author of 5 books of poetry, most recently A Cartography of Home, published by Terrapin Books, and that was this year. Her awards include the Pablo Neruda Prize, Rattle Poetry Prize, Gel Poetry Award, Keystone Award, and over a dozen nominations for the Pushcart Prize. Her work has been published widely in journals such as Beloit Poetry Journal, 32 Poems, Tar River Poetry, and Virginia Quarterly Review. Hayden is also an actor with extensive theater credits and has appeared in The Sixth Sense, Mindhunter, House of Cards, and Do No Harm. She is also the founder and director of No River Twice, an interactive audience-driven poetry reading performance group that combines poetry, improvisation, and audience participation. So I invite you, Hayden and Gerry, to let these words wash over us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine, and thank you, Janie. And I'm going to start. I just want to briefly say that I knew Chris through the Bucks County Poet Laureate Program and the Wordsmith Reading Series, through his workshop, large and small, and his gifts to me that as a revelatory first reader of book manuscripts. He was so generous with his gifts, but I'm so pleased to be here and so honored, because I think it's in his poetry that we just see how huge his art and his craft were. And especially in this book where he's weaving together the human and the mythic and the animal and the spiritual, and his incredible ability to sing about anything that was human. And it's a great gift. So I'm going to start, because he was a brilliant organizer of manuscripts, with the first poem in this manuscript, At the Cave of the Sibyl of Cumae, which has an epigraph from book 6 of the Aeneid. Non ulla laborum, o Virgo, noa mi facies, inopinawa surgit, omnia preque patquanimo, me canti paregi, uno ro quandic, inferni janua regis, dicatur et, tenebrosa palus, acerante refuso, ir ad conspectum, cari genitoris. When I was 6, I told myself if I could just survive first grade, I could probably survive anything. Then my dog ran back into my yard with my friend's cat in its mouth, and the cat felt like a package damaged in the mail, and I didn't know what to do with my hands afterwards. When I visited my mother in the hospital, her face had turned the white of store-bought lilies just before they wilt, her lips quivering as if the electricity was still inside her, looking for a way out. Nothing could be worse than this. I told myself at 18, letting the car idle and wishing I wasn't who I was, a boy, so desperate to catch a glimpse of his ex-girlfriend, he drives by her house every night. And then I was a father, humming my 10-month-old daughter to sleep the night before her operation. I sang so softly, I could barely hear the words myself. If only I could be that Aeneas who proclaims in book 6 of the Aeneid, no ordeal, O Sibyl, no new test can dismay me, for I have foreseen and foresuffered all. But I have read book 7 and know what comes next.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say what an honor it is to be here, to be celebrating Chris's work and his life, and this beautiful, beautiful book. I had the great fortune of being an undergraduate at Sarah Lawrence when Chris read there, in a reading with only 8 people, and he sat us in a circle, and he sat down and he read to us. And I just remember a lot of poets would be like, there are only 8 people, but he rolled with it. And that started a correspondence and a friendship that meant so much to me. And I'm grateful that I was able to go to Bucks County and read a couple of years ago and see him again. I'm going to start with what to do during a pandemic. As they did in our great-grandmother's time, the streets patiently wait for the hearses to cart the dead away. We wash our hands again and again. We know hands are capable of ruining lives. They've done it before. We do trust our legs and go for long walks. We walk so far we're not sure where we are or if we can get back from there. Then we make it back from there and are grateful for that small victory at least. Are we worried more about the contagion we inhale or the contagion we exhale? We keep our thoughts to ourselves. In a time of plague, no one wants to hear what everyone's really thinking. Even before the pandemic, some of us, sure, we were already contaminated. No mask to disguise that. No deep breaths or walks there and back. What did the fates ever change their course just because someone washed their hands? And now I'm going to read Loitering Along the Charles River, which starts with an epigraph from the Aeneid, fortunately for all of us, in English. The careful chief who never closed his eyes, himself the rudder holds, the sail supplies. A choir of Nereids meet him on the flood, once his own galleys honed from Ida's wood. That's from Book 10 of the Aeneid. Loitering Along the Charles River. After one more day of explaining the digestive system of a frog and trying to persuade yet another X to equal Y, and then missing foul shots I should have sunk, I wouldn't mind on my way home encountering a few water nymphs, maybe a choir of Nereids who've swum upstream from the sea to meet me on the flood. The world could be tolerable if at least part of the Aeneid could come true, and out of the waves rose women who talked even more intelligently than dolphins, and once had been pine trees. Your navy we were. Vergil's even more direct than Dryden. No sumus aedi sacro diversi pinus nunc pelage nymphae. That's pure metamorphosized wood talking in hexameters. Trees once upon a time hewed and hammered into ships, then set afire by one god, and then rescued by another, the only way the old gods knew to save anyone, by turning him or her or it into something other than who they were. That's what I really wanted at 16, to have nymphs in a ring enclose my ship and with immortal force nudge my vessel on its fated yet unfathomed course.
Troy sunk in flames I saw, nor could prevent. The Aeneid, Book 10, John Dryden translation. Our father shut the book like a trap door he shouldn't have opened for boys. Any dark you uncover, they'll beg to drop into it. Take away their mother, they'll find other ways to busy their hands. I had a bed all flames when I was Dido. Drymus, I swallowed mouthfuls of fire. Then, Priam's son, I found myself speared before Priam's eyes. Then Priam, my throne a funeral pyre. My brother, let no one go unpunished in the games he and Vergil made us play. Hold out your arm. The match exhausted, he held another to his own arm. We had to hurt enough to deserve to be Dardanians. And, Father, sometimes we did. Easter is canceled. Has an epigraph. What shall I do? Where go when I have cast this serpent skin of woe? From Endymion, Book 3. Who knows when or if there will be school again? There's no traffic anymore. Cars can go anywhere now and get there on time, only there are not many places to go. The stores are shut. Till further notice, the theater's dark. Kids watch so much television, it begins to feel like punishment. Even a teenager can play only so many video games before he feels trapped inside the screen. The most loving families tire of Parcheesi and Yahtzee, Monopoly and Scrabble. Today, the newspapers publish instructions for abused women. Avoid any room that has furniture with sharp edges. Say as little of importance as you can. It's Easter, but the Lord, our God, will have to rise without us. On Passover, this year, the Israelites must escape Egypt on their own. Though it's only a pandemic, we call it the plague to confer on ourselves at least the dignity of suffering a biblical event our great-grandkids will study in history class. What will we do when and if the plague is over? That's the game we play at night. We will rush to the malls and buy everything we have no real use for. We will fill our grocery carts with the earth's new abundance. We will bring our children to Sunday school every week. We will touch strangers' faces. We will kiss each other on the lips just because we can.
The Plague in Early Spring. Starts with an epigraph from the Philadelphia Inquirer. In these early weeks of the pandemic, landscaping crews have been busy cutting away rotting branches. The first week in the first year of the plague, when we told ourselves there was no plague, the flowers were more than willing to confirm our opinion. The second week of the plague, we were careful to remind ourselves we did not have any symptoms, and only the old and infirm had to worry. And the trees offered themselves as emblems of how perhaps even such culling was natural. The fifth week of the plague, we flung open windows and dared the virus to break into our houses. Some of us even tempted to embrace the fever and get it over with. The 6th week of the plague, we started hating tulips and daffodils for flaunting themselves just outside our windows, as if there were no such thing as a plague. And the trees, what high and mighty airs they still put on. Our children convince us now that they're dying of boredom, glare at us as if it's our fault that we were all born a lower evolutionary organism susceptible to disease. Whole families stand at the windows and wait for something terrible to happen to the oblivious lilies of the valley, complacent gladioli. Today, we hate wren and chickadee most of all. It's not just that they come and go as they please. It's their melodies, old as Homer, we resent.
Nor are we fit to force our way across. The Aeneid, Book 5, John Dryden translation. Because the first symptoms are a dry cough, I start coughing 3 days ago. And because sore throat proves one of the early warning signs, I've kept swallowing to see if my throat hurts, till now it does. And because chills often accompany the virus, I find myself shivering. So I run baths hot enough to burn away the fever, though every time I take my temperature, it reads 97.7. So I suspect the thermometer of lying and make everywhere I am a bed. And the cats lie down next to me as if they know I am dying, though I show no signs of expiring yet, except this 24-hour exhaustion. Every cell in me tired of what it knows will be asked of it, every muscle clenching for the onslaught. I keep closing my eyes, as I did as a child, when what I'd always feared would happen, happened, and I knew, seeing the ambulance drive away with my mother, it was my fault. And so I kept taking naps when I wasn't even sleepy, and then waking up suddenly as if to catch time off guard. I still shut my eyes any moment I can, because so many of those I love are already sick, and I don't know why I am not. And there's nothing I can do to change that, and very little I can do to help anyone. And when I was a child, I wanted with all my heart to be the one to suffer. And at the same time, I must confess, I wanted with all my heart not to suffer.
It would help if I unmuted myself. The day everything changed. I do not remember the exact date, but I won't forget the smell of rain still in the screen door, and the man on the other side trying to catch his breath as if he'd hurried here from a place very far away. He had knocked 3 times and then paused and knocked more sharply 3 times again, shifting his weight from leg to leg and reaching out as if he had a package to deliver, though his hands held nothing. He had a scar over his left eye that seemed to have never healed. When he lifted one palm to the screen door, I lifted mine to his dimpled skin, pressed hard against the mesh, and then he leaned his whole head against the door till his face seemed made of many tiny rectangles. I think of this day off and on. It's one of those stories I tell my grandchildren in the hopes of finally understanding it. There was only wire between us and such hurt in the man's eyes. I learned that day the real meaning of the word naked. Then he left, though I don't remember him going away any more than I might this leaf or that leaf dropping from my favorite tree, the one that every winter I wasn't sure would ever bud again. I have measured my life from this moment on, though I am not sure when it happened or if it ever did. Playing with fire. Another that begins with an epigraph from the John Dryden translation of the Aeneid. As when in summer welcome winds arise, the watchful shepherd to the forest flies, and fires the midmost plants, contagion spreads, and catching flames infect the neighboring heads. Around the forest flies the furious blast, and all the leafy nation sinks at last. Playing with fire. I used to rake up leaves just so I could see the flames infecting everything. I was a Ratatouillean, spreading contagion. At 17, I resented my father's faith in me and so did all I could to make a grand mess of everything he asked. Saturdays, I didn't tidy up the yard, but mounted an attack, each leaf deserving to be punished for falling. I saw to it that Troy burned again before my eyes, the blaze so high my family had to rush out, choking, and beg me to stop, but that just made me stoke the flames even higher. Throwing themselves against everyone's good intentions, the flames lifted glittering swords and impenetrable shields. They were going to set the neighborhood on fire or die trying.
A bedtime story for my granddaughter. How about a king hounded from his palace to a river so high there was no way to swim it, while he cradled his infant child? Trapped between his own mutinous Volsky and the equally murderous rapids, Metabus tucked motherless Camilla in baby bunting he had to weave right then out of cork bark. Okay, this is not the tale you'd thought I'd tell, but it's the one the poet Vergil believed we must hear. How a father bound his child tight to a spear that as a young boy he'd carved out of a tree so hard the knife could barely make the wood obey its blade. And then, before he let the spear attempt what no man should have to ask of it, he prayed to the huntress Diana, Latona's dearest daughter, and then, with his great right hand, hurled the hewn oak and the child strapped to its quivering shaft across waves that kept opening their huge mouths to swallow whatever they could, and they had an even greater appetite than the Volsky who liked to fricassee their captives. Just before Metabus's vengeful subjects could seize and feast on him, he stripped off his tunic and dove so deep underwater, even the wiliest of rapids couldn't reach down and snare him. And when Metabus rose and shook off the cheated river, Lo and behold, there was his child in swaddling, still fastened to the oak shaft, and with the kind of smile kids get when they wake, as you do sometimes, Sadie, to find yourself on the other side of sleep. And the father knew right then and there, this child would grow into a woman no one would ever vanquish, nothing would ever prove too much for her.
This is 130 Lowell Avenue. Begins with an epigraph in Latin from the Aeneid book 1. Paria cui gradibus sergabant Lefemina nexicae, eretribus foribus cardos ridabat Aeneas. Hoc primum in luco nova resoblata timorem, leniet hic primum, Aeneas separe salutum, ausus et afflictus melius confidere rebus. 130 Lowell Avenue. When I met Kista for the first time, he was waving to passing cars from a lawn chair in the small patch of grass before a house exactly like the houses on either side of it. And beside him was a rusted red wagon full of hubcaps for sale, dozens of silver-spoked circles pulling the sun down to his front yard. Only I ever called 130 Lowell Avenue a cottage. Its 6 rooms home to grandmother, unmarried aunt, widowed uncle, father, mother, and child, and cat named Cigar, and a bird named Randy. In the one room that didn't have a bed, toilet, or stove, I was invited to sit on the walnut sofa with plaid curtains beside the walnut end table and in front of the walnut coffee table. And I looked up at the Virgin Mary framed on the wall and was served ginger ale from the old television set, now a liquor cabinet. And I smelled the baked lasagna, impatient to be devoured in the next room, and noticed no books except the Bible that obviously not been read in a very long time, and a photo album full of pictures of a pudgy, bespectacled child with a smile that seemed to say, I know I'm everyone's darling, but still I must make my own way. And it was then that, like Aeneas, I first began to dare to hope that there could be safety here. And I swore, unlike Aeneas, I'd never forsake this chubby girl who grew into a slender economics major with a student loan and lovely cheekbones, and whom I'd only just kissed a month ago. No, I'd do almost anything not to betray her or anyone in her house. The necropolis of Tarquinius. What are you boys doing? Our father asked, though he didn't really want to know why we had pickaxes in our hands. We just discovered a new word, necropolis, and now we wanted a city of the dead of our own. But it was too hard digging life-size trenches. So we settled for the flower garden our mother wouldn't need anymore. Once we'd finished our burial plots, we required bodies to bury. So Timothy started embalming the marionettes our mother used to let us play with on rainy days. Dainty king and queen and the rest of the royal family with their servants and musicians, all conscripted to die with their ruler, each placed in a sarcophagus we'd molded out of what was left of our mother's potter's clay. Before each lid hardened, Timothy carved winged monkeys for it, and harp-playing lions, pomegranates and eggs, and we placed inside tiny tablets on which we had inscribed hieroglyphs for the dead to decode, packed also miniature baskets of raisins and rice in case anyone needed to eat, as well as read in the underworld. We nestled under each prince's head small pillows we'd stuffed with pine needles. Timothy had read in a book that the last sense to leave the body was smell. And now it was time, he said, to seal the tomb. We buried an entire nation under brick, mud, then pebbles, then earth, rounded high enough for us to find the tumuli again. But no, Timothy said, we could not dig anyone back up. This was it. There was no question of resurrection.
And now we're going to end this where Chris has us end the book, the last poem in the book, which is the procession to the palace of King Neptune, which has an epigraph from Endymion, Book 3. Say, I entreat thee, what achievement high is in this restless world for me reserved? What if from thee my wandering feet had swerved, had we both perished? Look, the sage replied. Endymion with quick hand the charm applied. The nymph arose, he left them to their joy, and onward went upon his high employ, showering those powerful fragments on the dead. And as he passed, each lifted up its head, as doth a flower at Apollo's touch. Death felt it to its inwards, 'twas too much. The procession to the palace of King Neptune. How could a man, barnacled as rock at low tide, rank as seaweed, have a story worth listening to by a prince enamored of the moon? And yet, Endymion finally took the wand and scroll from Glaucus' knobby fingers and did as he was told, tore the parchment into pieces small as snow and struck the wand against the empty air ×9, and a host of lovers lifted their heads as if the sun himself had descended to wake each of the dead, and no matter what they had suffered, each shook off 1,000 years of imprisoned sleep, and Endymion and Glaucus led this multitude revived and limber again, jubilant down marble stairs, pouring as easily as hourglass sand toward jasper pillars and opal domes. 'Tis dizziness to think of it. And all I have to do now is keep reading till my own resurrected dead march with them, as if they too had sailed in the same capsized ship and been locked forever in the anonymity of a sleep so sound, no words could rise from them to our expectant ears. There's David Kime laughing his Woody Woodpecker laugh, as if he'd never been consumed in flames. and Sandy Becker next to him, so distracted by a heron, she forgets to bring that gun to her mouth. And Doug Hughes trails behind, not quite believing his good luck at having his body back again. And Doris Civil holds a book she'd been putting off reading, and Barbara Wynne, her back finally straight again, takes notes on the most common of flowers, since everything now seems exotic. And Del Purcell's there too, putting the world straight once more. And Nils Falk has a list of questions for King Neptune, because he can't return to his wife empty-handed. That would make dying a complete waste. And Pamela Perkins Frederick and Herb Perkins Frederick, in their matching neon green hoodies, have already cornered Triton to discuss the thermodynamics of waves. And Robert Fraser leads the way with his walking stick for a whole legion of minor poets, because all of us have been raised from the dead. But that doesn't mean we don't need a little help still keeping our balance on the golden steps, in the marble halls to which Endymion has led us, especially if we were singing. And by now, who of us isn't singing?
Okay, silent clapping. Let's have all of our panelists can unmute. That was a beautiful reading. Thank you so much, Hayden and Gerry, for bringing voice to those lovely words. Bravo is being said in the chat. Beautiful tribute. So at this time, we're going to try and do a little bit of an open mic, but with a twist, and that's asking people to share some favorite words from a Christopher Bursk poem. It doesn't have to be from this volume. It can be from any of his writings that you have experienced. And so I think Lorraine said that you were willing to start this off for us.
Sure.
But please just put in the chat if you like, and I can promote you to a panelist.
Okay.
If you're willing to come on. We don't have any takers yet, so give it a think. Find a poem if you want to come on. But Lorraine, let's have you read one of your favorite poems by Chris, just to start us off.
So this is from the book. Before I do that, one more time, I wanted to encourage you, the bodily function of purchasing books, Amazon, from Ragged Sky Press. I'll put the link in when someone else is reading. All the proceeds from the request of Chris and the family, it's going to the Peace Center in Langhorne. So even if you bought one, buy another one. The holidays are coming. It's a perfect gift. So this is from Places of Residence. I believe this was 1983 or so. I don't know if I was born yet then. An ordinary man. A friend from work has died, and I placed his things in boxes. From his desk, take a plain rock. One he must have found remarkable. Set it in the sink and turn the water on. The gray reveals its many secret lives. I soak the stone for what it darkens to, what rings smoke around it, and hold it like a planet I'm watching change in my palm. Keep dipping it in the water, as if not to let it dry old and dull again. Finally, I must allow the air to seize it. The surrender is slow, dignified, as if each dry place were the rock's own decision. For the sake of an ordinary man, I place the rock in the water again, bring it back to the dark weather buried in it.
Wonderful. We don't have any takers. Everybody's feeling a little bit shy to hop on screen today, and that's fine. Maybe just kind of feeling a little bit overwhelmed by this entire reading. I'm sure many of us are. It was so beautifully done.
Looks like Chris's brother, Edward, might like to read.
Oh,
Edward Bursk.
Oh, okay, that just came up just as I said that. Wonderful. Okay, so Chris's brother, let me get him promoted up here. Let me see. Oops, nope. Attendees. I hope I remember how to do this. Chris, I gotta find you.
You too.
I do. Hang on. Okay, I have done this before. So oops. There we go. Is it Edward Burks that wants to come online? Yes.
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 Okay. Promote to panelists. There we go. As I said, we're being a little bit informal today because I think that's how Chris would have wanted it. Okay. Should be on.
There he is.
Okay. Wait a minute. Is he on? Is it?
He's muted.
Oh. There we go.
There I am.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My brother Jack, I was trying to get on. I'm not sure he made it, and Christopher's wife Marianne is also listening, and we are all most appreciative of this wonderful tribute to a very wonderful man, and of course my brother and our lifelong friends. I just had a couple things I wanted. I've got a favorite poem of my own. Of his that I would like to read. It's fairly quick. And before I do that, so I don't forget, Christopher was published in the quarterly review of literature long time ago, and he wrote an afterword to a number of his poems. And I wanted to read something because it's a sort of his philosophy of poetry in a sense, and it addresses here. In this brief paragraph, something that Christopher and his brother Jack, whom I hope is listening, experienced as children. Jack invented a mystical fantasy land called Brem that he and Christopher could escape from some very trying times when my mother was ill, our mother was ill, and it had a huge impact on Chris. And I just want to mention this last paragraph of this long piece, and he addresses this. Chris says, "What I love about poetry is that it draws us together into a community of faith, all of us, brothers and sisters. Dearest brother Jack, you taught me this when you led me into Brem and promised we would be able to return whenever we needed. Isn't that what we love about poetry? We can cross its borders again and again." The poem of his that I'd like to read is a fairly early one. And the reason, of course, it's meaningful to me is because Christopher is describing our relationship and in a better way than I ever could have, even if I'd thought about it seriously as a subject, but meaningfully to me and lovingly. Anyway, the poem's called The Family Boat. And it says, and Christopher, I have to tell you in the beginning, Christopher and I grew up very differently. Christopher was obviously a man of peace, committed his life to it, to teaching. I chose war, actually war chose me, but we were just going on completely different paths, but came together as adults into a wonderful close friendship. And this poem might have been sort of the start of that. And Christopher says, "The Family Boat. Your vote cancels mine. My refusal to go to war compels you to serve. Brother, let's stop making each other guilty, at least for the day. Keep plenty of hard work between us and take the family boat down to bare wood. You be responsible for one side, I the other. When I begin talking in cliches about dying children, I will feel old varnish under my nails and turn quiet. Every time you bring up national security, you will breathe dust. The only important sounds shall be our hands scraping, mine on starboard, yours on port. We will go together down the curve of the bow, following a grain's digressions, stroking on different sides a fine weathered wood till we are almost touching through it. Brother, let us begin so late in summer, it doesn't matter if we get done. Let's forget about winning races and instead raise dark widening rivers in the grain. We will be accountable each for one smooth part of the boat and leave the wood naked and clean. We need the long silence of this shared labor before we talk seriously."
Thank you, Edward, for coming on to share both background and the story and that poem. It was just wonderful. We have somebody else who wants to come on and share, and I'm going to promote them to a panelist. We have George Drew, who's going to come on. So bringing George up, and I don't think I see anybody else. And so I think we're going to close it down after George, and we're just about at the top of our hour anyhow. So George, welcome to the screen, and
Thank
just
you.
tell us what poem you're going to share, and maybe how you knew Chris as well.
Okay, I met Chris in 1984 at the Robert Frost Place in Franconia. And well, let's just say we're brothers in arms. I'll let it go at that. The poem I want to read is from his book, Ovid at 15, which is one of my favorite of his books for sure. It's a small poem, but I think it's a good poem to end this with anyway, because it's about writing. I think the poem gets at the intimacy of the poetic creative act, and it gets at the obsession of it. They go together. This is called simply The Word. To see what it looks like on paper, you print it in block letters, draw it out like a breath, make it roll over the page like a wave cresting. Try different scripts, write it over and over as another young man might, the name of the girl he dreams of marrying. The pleasures of the language, of shaping a secret thought into sounds, and these sounds into letters. A word set all by itself on the page, spread out before you like a map, an island too exotic and distant to hope to reach right now. Even after you rip up the page, tearing even the smallest pieces smaller in case someone reads your trash, you repeat the word in school, during lacrosse practice. Deep in your mind, you are casting a spell, creating a small charmed circle around yourself, etching a line no one can cross.
Wow, that was actually the perfect poem to end with. You are right. Thank you, George, for coming on to share that. And thank you to everybody who came. We had a great audience here today with us online. And I'm so glad that this series is continuing, and that we were able to honor Chris in this way, and that we'd had a lot of Chris's family members here with us today, as well as regional poets. The Poets at the Library series will be continuing. It's right now, it's a quarterly online event. Our next one is coming up in February. I can put the link in there. It'll be held, we hold it on Crowdcast, and we do have an open mic as part of that if you want to come. And this time we're having a Canadian poet there who's really well known in Canada, Maher Aeneid. So that's one of the nice things that's allowed us for the Poets at the Library, is that we can go international a little bit. And we also will have a local poet, of course, Philip Holmes. And so we've been kind of experimenting with that, being able to honor our local voices, as well as bring in some voices from beyond our borders, since we are virtual. So we do hope that you'll consider joining us for that. And thank you, Hayden, and thank you, Gerry and Lorraine. Thank you for all that you've done to organize and promote and put this together. And Ellen Foose, I know you're on there. Thank you for bringing this beautiful book into the world through Ragged Sky Press. And thank you, everybody, for being here. And we will see you soon at the library. Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you so much.
Janie, Lorraine, thank you so much. Hayden, an honor to read with you.
Same,
All
and
the Bursk family, my condolences. We miss
See you Thursday, Hayden.
an honor to be here and read those words.
Me too.
Okay.
Very
Bye,
good.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for letting me.